So for this year, my wife, who is an absolute maniac for Christmas calendars, and knowing that I love whiskies, also got me a calendar. And we spent a few months waiting for it. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but it was something that I was getting. And the calendar finally arrived. It was a good quality product, I could tell, and I couldn't wait for the month to begin so that I could actually open the first door and see what a whiskey I would get. Quite quickly I started ranking these whiskies out, and on the currently on the last position, the Joe Gadagan Tennessee whiskey that absolutely disagree with me because of the smokiness. The apple and the pear, I think, didn't just simply didn't work with the smokiness, and it was a mess that I didn't care for at all. And the second one, second to last, is a Dingle. I think it was a very forgettable whiskey, even though the lime and the mintiness and the vanilla in a sense made it quite spry and alert in your mouth, but in general, and thinking about if I'd actually buy it, I wouldn't even consider this a house whiskey quality. It's a different kind of mess than the Tennessee whiskey before it. And then we have Deanston, and I actually had a bottle of Deanston on the shelf, and it's a low-end house whiskey. The fruitiness is there, and I think with the spiciness and the fruitiness it can come across as a cheap whiskey, but this, I believe, sort of expands it a bit, especially the virgin oak version of the whiskey. The oakiness is there, and as a huge bourbon lover, everything that has to do with oak goes into my mouth. That's a rule. Wolf Burn, not awfully familiar whiskey, usually tends to be on the lower side, cheaper whiskeys, and I avoid these things. I've sampled some Wolf Burn, but I don't think it was the Aurora. This was interesting, I suppose. The chocolatey and the almond kind of came across more than melon or vanilla even. Raisins, of course, dominated. A decent one, not that amazing. Star Wars, it was interesting one because the oakiness and the spiciness made it quite dry. They have dryness on the symbol there, and it was kind of interesting. And this one, I believe, would go well from a tumbler and with a big block of ice. I usually take my whiskeys neat, but this one, I believe, could expand with some water in it and grow into more in itself. One of the most sold whiskies in Finland has to be the Green Spot, because it's so even and it's so full of flavor, but I think it lacks the robust backbone of a good royal whiskey, a proper whiskey, but it's a good house whiskey. Very unappealing bottle, very new age thing, and I didn't much care for it, but I bought it and quite enjoyed it with some friends. First of the Kentucky Straights, the bourbons that actually kind of kicked me in the butt, and the Ezra, I think it was the spiciness, the peppery aspect of it, and the honey-like sweetness made it spicy. And even though they haven't got the spiciness icon here, to my mouth it was spicy. It was cheap whiskey, but I love bourbon. Every bourbon is gets a heart from me. Rye whiskies are an acquired taste, I think, and I've begun to like rye whiskies because I can see what the traditional flavors, how they come across from a rye distilling. And this was interesting one, and one of the more interesting ones that I've had actually. And the berries and the oakiness kind of gave this one interesting aspect to it. One of my favorites, few straight bourbon. I've had a few bottles on the shelf, and I wouldn't actually rank this as spicy as it would appear. But it's a sort of like eggnog comes across from the taste, and of course the sweetness and the toffee, or the, you know, very, very mouth warming taste to it. Stork, a German straight rye whiskey, was interesting one. The breadiness and the butterscotch dominated. I think the oak was there, but you sort of had to know what to look for. The spiciness, I believe, was a bit too much, but the bread-like quality of the whiskey sort of enchanted me, so that I actually considered ordering a bottle, but I decided to wait a bit and see what comes next. Westward, absolutely fantastic whiskey that I apparently sell in a very tiny bottle, and because of that I think I will skip this one, but absolutely fantastic. The butterscotch and the oakiness was in such a good balance that it was easy for me to pick everything that was hidden underneath, and mainly fruitiness and the oranges, of course. The peel, orange peel, is a very different taste from straight up oranges. And number one is the whiskey from the first day. It's the Bren from French distillery, and of course I'd start sampling the whiskies without looking ahead what's coming, and the calendar has a little booklet, a leaflet that lets you flip and see what you're actually tasting, and it's an interesting concept, one that I will be, of course, looking forward to getting more deep into. But as a whiskey friend, it was an interesting surprise to find a French whiskey, and I had some preconceptions, I think, regarding French distilleries. Of course, there's a huge heritage there, but mainly on different types of products. But it will be interesting to see as the days go on how the new whiskey samples will fit into this lineup, and what will change, and will we get a new number one. And I think that I will order few of the first position bottles eventually. So maybe I'll catch you later when I update where we are going with my whiskey adventure of this Christmas. Take care.